The Hornets suffered two bad losses over the weekend. It was a rough one. Not quite as bad a weekend for PJ Washington. Then we discuss what the pain threshold is before you actually make a change in season. All today, Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's Doug Branson. You can find him on his substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can listen to me on the radio every weekday on Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ, 12 to 3 p.m. on Wes and Walker. Let's go to the bad weekend for the Charlotte Hornets here, Doug. They got smacked a couple of times. One, they made a little more respectable at the end to the point where they actually got me into sit-up video game mode. I actually thought, okay, when it was 127 to 122, did it get to 5 or got to 6, I believe? In the fourth quarter of that Jazz game, there was a little part of me that wanted to see something great. Like, I actually did have a tiny bit of hope in that fourth quarter. Not so much against the Rockets, that they got blown out there. There wasn't anything respectable about that score, losing 138 to 104. They did lose to Utah, 134 to 122. It's getting so bad here, Doug. I mean, I wish we could start with something else. And we're going to get to PJ Washington, the price of the brick going up, you might say, with PJ at the trade deadline. And actually, you literally did say that on Twitter. So we'll get to more trade deadline stuff. But it is hard in the meantime, watching this team just get smacked borderline every single night, especially with no Terry Rozier to help and with LaMelo sitting out now, as he's one to do, as he tries to get through this ankle injury and sitting the second night of back-to-backs, and it looks like that's going to be the norm.
Well, I think the Utah game in particular frustrates you as a fan because you watch them in the third quarter in which they outscored Utah, a team that, may I remind you, put up 47 points on you in the first quarter and had a significant lead at the half. And then in the third quarter, you outscored that team 41 to 23. It's not as if this team is incapable of playing solid defense. It's not as if this team is incapable of moving the basketball effectively, getting the ball to the paint, kicking it out. Shooting is a little iffy, but generally I think this team has enough offense to compete with most teams in a regular season setting. But they just can't do it for 48 minutes. It's frustrating fans. It's obviously frustrating Steve Clifford if you watch these post-game press conferences, because he's faced with this team that can't seem to put together effort and execution. Against Houston, when they were blown out pretty much the entire game, that was a matter of execution. They played hard, and Clifford was generally not satisfied with the result, but satisfied with the effort. They've just got to do the right things. And then, and by right things, I mean, defensively communicating, not doubling a guy that doesn't need to be doubled, recognizing when to help and when not to overhelp, just stuff like that on the defensive end. And then offensively, just moving the basketball, not getting stuck into ISO hero ball, which they did certainly at the end of that Houston game, just going over and over into ISO possessions that went nowhere. But against Utah, you had a first half where they just didn't try hard enough, Walker. And so they can't put these two things together. That's what this season has been all about. That I think there's an existential issue with how this roster is constructed in terms of what it takes to win on a nightly basis in the NBA.
So that's all the bad. There's plenty to choose from. If we wanted to focus on some of the positives, Brandon Miller, tough shooting night for him, going 0 of 7 from deep, did go 6 of 18 from the field, and also had his best dunk of the season. That dunk was nasty. He shakes Kelly Olynyk on the baseline or right there out on the perimeter, and then drives baseline, slams it all up in Walker Kessler's grill. What's great about this, too, is he has been hunting this. I think I saw at the Hive tweet this out, but he had been hunting just Ja Morant style. You know how Ja has like the best dunks that don't go in, but they still make the highlight reel because the attempt was crazy enough. We've gotten about 3 or 4 of those from Brandon Miller, and he just hasn't quite been able to connect on the crazy ones. He got this one to go, and it was all up in Walker Kessler's grill, so that was fun to see. Nick Richards showing up with what is a career high 26 points, 10 of 11 from the field, hit 6 of his 8 free throws, grabbed 13 rebounds, Doug, 7 offensive rebounds because that's just who Nick Richards is, but also 4 blocks. Defensively, you know, we've criticized Nick Richards like being in the right spot at the right time, like that's been there for Nick, but the effort, I do think he's, even in the second half, there was an incredible block, I think, on Walker Kessler where he just gets out of the floor on a second attempt really fast. Like, before we go all the way to PJ, Nick Richards deserves some love here too, on top of the Brandon Miller slam.
Well, I want to go back to the Miller stuff and say that great minds think alike, because I also wrote in Every Hornets box score that he had been hunting that all season. It was probably it's probably cathartic for him to finally get that, and it is. I think he is trying to work his way through a rookie wall right now. You can see it just in terms of putting together an entire game. It's been difficult for him, and I'll also say, like, gotta have some more rebounds, man. He had 9 rebounds the other night, a couple of nights ago. Like, he's capable of. I can't walk away from any more of these games without criticism when he's scoring 12 points and getting like 1 or 2 rebounds. Got to have more rebounds from him and PJ too. And then on the Nick Richards thing, he's obviously playing his way out of Charlotte. I mean, this guy is putting together, I mean, it's just same as Terry Rozier, just putting together some great audition tape for teams that are going to be in need of an extra big that plays as hard as Nick Richards does, as intelligently at times as Nick Richards does. He makes mistakes like anybody does. But, yeah, I mean, he's going to be an attractive, I think, asset if the Hornets are willing to move on.
So the Brandon Miller stuff, I had a chance to talk with him on Friday. We aired the interview on Wes and Walker, and you can go catch that at WFNZ.com. I asked him about the rookie wall and whether he was hitting it. He said, no, I'm absolutely not hitting it. It's a mindset. I'm not going to hit it. Although, but like, you know, at the time I talked to him, it was 4 straight games of over 20 points. Like, the rookie wall had not been showing up, at least when I talked to him on Friday.
You're a jinx. You jinxed it.
I guess I did.
You can't talk about the perfect game when the perfect game is happening. You cannot talk about the rookie wall when the man is in the middle of an amazing streak. What did you do? This is all Walker Mail's fault. This inefficient scoring from Brandon Miller. It's all on Walker. But look, I don't want a rookie to admit that they're hitting the rookie wall. But I can watch games and I can look at box scores and say, yeah, like there's a performance dip, and maybe it's a blip. If it's a blip and not a dip, you know, if he suddenly, right, exactly. Mm-hmm. You got it.
I thank you. Thank you. All right. We need to dip out of this segment. Let's focus on some of the other good things that we talked about. You mentioned the trade value with Nick Richards. We'll continue that conversation, but also it's time to talk PJ Washington coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
PJ Washington goes for a career high too. About 43 points, I believe tied for a career high for PJ, going for 43 in this game against Utah. I mean, fake comeback at the end, but got close enough to where the Jazz got maybe just a little butt tight, needed to continue to score in the fourth quarter. And so we'll discuss all of that coming up next on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, even more than that. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. This episode also brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and then placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2, maybe even 3. Who knows? That's up to you. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, so much more. But Super Bowl props, it's the Super Bowl for that too. Super Bowl weekend props, whether it's the national anthem, whether it's actual games, whether it's actual players receiving over and under, it's the best thing ever. I love everything about it, especially with all the stuff that's not even football related. Get in on all of that with FanDuel. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins on that bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
All right, before we get into the PJ stuff, Walker, something happened at this Utah Jazz game, and I want your opinion on it as a sports radio professional. You've been doing this a long time now. These kinds of incidents happen every now and then, and I want your thoughts. But before I do that, I want to ask you, were you attending this game, or did you watch it on Bally Sports?
No, I watched this game on Bally Sports. I was not at the game. So Friday I was doing Queen's game, and then Saturday I was at home watching Utah.
Okay, so in this game, I'm sure you saw that there was a fella behind the Jazz bench who was, during Hornets free throws, wearing a Jazz jersey, during Hornets free throws, screaming very loudly, high-pitched, almost like bird calls, pterodactyl-like.
Bird. Yes, it was totally a bird call.
Okay, and so this divided, I think, the Every Hornets Boxscore chats, and a lot of people commented on Twitter. Is this fair? Is this fair or foul? FOWL.
Yeah.
This guy behind the bench.
What? So what do you like? Is what? So it doesn't even matter. I was gonna ask for a stipulation. Like, what do you mean? What is fair or foul? I don't need anything of it.
Are you cool with this? Are you cool with a guy doing that?
No, it's all foul.
Okay.
It's all foul. I'm here for all of the foul. That guy became such a nuisance to everybody trying to watch this game. None of it was clever. None of it was like trash talk towards the other team. Look, maybe some of it is just that he's so good at being an annoying fan that we could single him out over everybody else. Well, that's fine. You're so good. We got to get you on up out of here. And here's the other thing. When you are so bad, when you are so annoying that I can't watch the game without hearing you on the other end of the floor. They're on one end. He's on one end of the floor. But most of his time to shine was on free throw attempts. PJ Washington was laughing at him during one of his, few free throw attempts. It had to be about that guy. I could still hear his bird calls when it was Utah on offense, and people were cheering for the defensive stop. No, everything about him was a nuisance. And if you are being a nuisance to the masses, then you got to go. Everything about it was foul. I couldn't stand that guy.
Unpopular opinion coming. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. Let the man heckle. I'll give you a couple of reasons why. Number one, it was effective. You can't argue with the effectiveness of it. The Hornets were 15 of 21 from the line, 71%.
That's kind of normal though, right? Like 15 of how do we know it was effective? 15 of 21 is that kind of what they do?
That's a lot of missed free throws. The Hornets have been sort of hot and cold from the free throw line, but he got Cody to miss. I mean, Cody missed 2. And Nick missed 2, PJ missed 1, and Leaky missed 1. So, look, it was effective. I'll say this other thing, too. That's not an issue if there are lots of Hornets fans making noise in the arena. And there are not lots of Hornets fans making noise in the arena because the Hornets aren't very good. And the reasons that the Hornets aren't very good, a lot of that is tied back to decisions that this franchise has made. So I would like that thrown in the face on TV. It's on you can't escape it. It's on Bally's. It's in the arena. I love that Bally's put the guy close up, and then like immediately next possession there was an attendant down there talking to him. Didn't stop him. Didn't remove him. But it was almost a little like Bally's tattletale situation. But look, man, if the franchise doesn't want that kind of shame, then do something about it.
Wait, hold on. Wait, I don't know. Wait. You looked right at the camera.
Do something about it.
Wait,
do something. I'm not putting this on. I'm not putting this on fans. Fans have spent their hard-earned money on this team for too long, watching at best mediocrity. And so, look, if this organization doesn't want an annoying Utah Jazz fan making bird calls that are heard on the broadcast, then put a product on the floor that Charlotte fans want to go to.
This is I think we keep climbing the ladder no matter what the problem is. It always starts at the top, right? It's Gabe Plotkin's fault.
That's usually how problems work.
It's Rick Schnall's fault.
I don't blame the janitors.
Fault. That's right. No, I think it could just be that this guy is super annoying and different. Like, this guy is way different than other fans who come in. I've seen many fans heckle constantly from the court or from the whatever the like right on court side, whether it be 15 rows up. This guy was all kinds of different. And the fact that Eric Collins, you could see him. What's crazy is we could single this guy out. He was right there in front of the camera once they would go to the right side, I guess, as we watch it on the court. It was amazing. So maybe it was you. Maybe it was just you in a Utah jersey. And then now you
never know.
I love that guy.
I told you that opinion is not going to be popular. The comments will tear me apart. And that's how you know that I'm an honest broker on this podcast. I don't come on here to tell you what I think you want to hear. Too. I'm just giving you how I feel. And how I feel is if the organization doesn't want that to occur, it's not easy, but there is a way to fix that. And that is to actually legitimately try to put a winning product on the floor, which I don't think they've been doing over the past couple of seasons.
Just win games. And then it fixes everything.
It helps. I don't hear that in Dallas. I don't hear that in Golden State. I don't hear that a lot of places.
Okay, that's true, I guess. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I'm sure that guy has been other places before. Okay, let's move on. Do we have enough time to talk PJ in this segment, or do we just need to? Okay, this segment's hilarious. So PJ Washington goes nuts, and it's in a game where they get still beat 134-122. They did get close. I'm trying to remember the exact point. I think they got to within 6 once they got to the fourth quarter, and the Jazz were able to separate themselves immediately on the next possession. Yeah, it was 1-7. Okay, so 129, 122. That's when PJ Washington hits a 3, and then the very next possession, Colin Sexton hits a 2-point bucket, and at that point, that mattered a ton. Hornets could not complete what would have been an absolute miraculous comeback. But PJ, in the effort, goes for 43 points, is nuclear from three-point land, 7 of 9. Lots of 2-point made field goals here, 2-point field goals made, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 rebounds. That's it. So with PJ, if he continues to not score 43, but if he continues to hit at a higher clip, trade deadline is February 8th. Doug, what kind of return do you think PJ Washington could get right now, especially if he is just more effective in this next week and a half or so, even if it doesn't mean 43 every night?
Yeah, I don't know that it climbs all the way to the level of a, super protected first round pick. I think you are still talking about what kind of player can you bring back, plus, some second round pick action or possibly taking on, if you wanted sort of 3 second rounders, would you be willing to take on a contract that had a few years on it that was, maybe a little bit more expensive than PJ Washington's? I'm not sure, honestly, because I think that PJ as a product, I actually don't agree that the price of the brick is going up on PJ, because I think PJ as a product is pretty baked. I don't think that a lot of teams are looking at PJ and going, super high ceiling that still hasn't been achieved. I mean, I think they're looking at him and going, hey, this is a guy that is flexible. You can ask him to do a lot of different things, can score in those moments. And I think what you're hoping for, if you're the organization and if you're fans that pay close attention to this thing, you're hoping that another GM looks at the 43-point game and looks at the fact that he's had multiple 40-point games and goes, ooh, that's nice. And they don't look at the fact that at the end of this game, it was PJ Washington falling asleep on multiple possessions and not getting defensive rebounds that hurt the team's ability to actually get back into this game, which has been a thing with PJ Washington. Like, his game is incomplete, and that's why he's not starting for this team right now. And so you're hoping that that's what you're hoping that other GMs are not looking at that. They're not looking that closely, and they're saying, ooh, 40 points, that's nice.
No, and I know, look, it's like we've flirted with this, I guess, but like we definitely have different evaluations of PJ. Like, so when we're watching PJ, and they were getting just cooked in the first half, right? First quarter, terrible. Second half, not much better. They're getting cooked. When we bring up the PJ not rebounding well, that's an actual thing. PJ's not a great rebounder.
4:15 in the fourth quarter. Go look. If you want to look for yourself, find 4:15 in the fourth quarter. PJ just stands there and lets Collins get an offensive rebound putback. Just stands there. It's not as if, he just got out physical, got knocked out of the way, maybe a little bit late reacting. He literally just stands there, game on the line, and he is representative in my mind of the main problem with this Hornets team, which is they are more interested in scoring than doing any of the other little things that actually seal games, actually win games.
All right, so that's a fine. And also we'll go to the last segment. So let's move on, because I was going to talk about PJ, but we'll go to the last segment because we don't have enough time. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
I have PJ thoughts, and we'll also get to just how bad the pain threshold has to be before you make in-season changes. How bad can it get? We'll get to that in the last segment coming up shortly. Today's episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by Quiz. That's Quiz with 3 eyes. It's the next generation trivia experience. It's also the world's first platform where you can earn money playing knowledge games. And for Locked On Hornets fans, they've created an NBA quiz game where you can test your knowledge and win real cash. Play with friends or other fans and let your knowledge shine all the way to the bank. You can play without downloading anything at all. Just go to app.quizwith3eyes.com and start playing today. NBA Quiz is the ultimate knowledge challenge for fans that live and breathe basketball. Go to app.quiz.com to test your knowledge and win cash today. That's Quiz with 3 eyes, just like a three-pointer. Play now, showcase your skills, and take home cash prizes. App.quiz.com, where fans become champions. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, I want to get to the in-season changes conversation. I just wonder if it gets bad enough, right? Because lots of people have talked about firing Steve Clifford. It's so terrible. And I think there's a combo to be had. Like, when you're getting beat by 30 and outscored by 30 in the first, all things are on the table. Like, everything is on the table. Before we do that, I was watching PJ Washington in the first half before he even ended up with 40. Like, I already knew I was going to come to this episode and just staunchly defend my guy, which I know that PJ is my favorite, but this is why, Doug. Because when we go to the first half and they're just getting freaking destroyed by 40, I made it a point. Okay, this is a terrible defensive performance right now. Who is playing so terribly? I'm going to watch PJ because I think it all starts with PJ, like how good they can be. Let me see what he's doing. And Doug, I've already mentioned a couple of plays here and there in previous games, but like, this is why, like, the rebounding's terrible. I'll go check out 413. And I know that 415. I know he gives up rebounds. I think, like, focusing on that after 43 points to give them a chance in hell is certainly a way to look at this game where everybody sucked. That is certainly a way to view it. The way that I will view it is in the first half, PJ having to attempt to make up for everybody's defensive mistake. Mm-hmm. It is like, you can go to 4:15. That's true. Please watch the whole second quarter. Like, PJ has to dive in to help because nobody is picking up roll man. He has to go out and close out against Lauri Markkanen, who still drills a three in his face. But it's a Del Curry. I was in love with Del Curry, who said, great closeout by PJ. There's just nothing you can do when you have to collapse that hard. But Lauri still splashed it in his face because he's a 7-foot three-point shooter, and PJ had to go try to help somebody else. On the perimeter, there's another corner three that is given up when PJ's trying to help somebody out. And then he's like, wait, where is somebody here? Where is the guy the guy's supposed to be covering this wide open three-point attempt? PJ Washington is not like OG Anunoby. Like, I'm not trying to get it crazy where he deserves a spot on the all defensive team. PJ Washington is so clearly leaps and bounds better than everybody else on this roster defensively, especially with the guys that he plays. That's my frustration. And so that's why, to me, for sure, ceiling, not that high. Can have the fun scoring hot nights. We saw it against the Kings. We saw it against the Jazz when it was quite frankly too late. But the connectivity, like defensively, him trying to save everybody's hide, like this is the thing that makes me frustrated when people start to like PJ Washington. Okay, whatever. Like, no, man. Please take him. Just take him off the court and don't allow him to play 25 minutes. Like, there might be times where they're better and whatever, like 3-point shot luck, whatever. But like, just see what they would look like without him playing 25 minutes a night. I would love to see that. They'd probably give up 150, or at least, and maybe they do still give up 150 when he's out there. But he would at least be the guy that's trying. I don't know. Just that I get so frustrated for him, and that's why I love PJ. And yeah, like 43 points, whatever. What was hilarious, though, is I will say this was funny because people are going for 70 and 60 and 50 right now. When PJ scored 43, Doug, NBA Twitter was like, okay, now we've reached a problem. Now the NBA has gone too far, allowing this guy to go for 43 points.
Well, he is in strange elite company when it comes to Hornets scoring 40 points. There haven't been a lot of guys that have done it multiple times. I mean, you're talking about Glenn Rice, Kemba Walker,
Johnny Newman, surprisingly enough. Yeah, there you go. Top 30 Hornet.
You feel better now? Do you feel good? I just sat back and let you kind of do your thing.
Hell yeah. I feel great. I feel like, not even sarcastic at all. I feel great. I needed to get that off of my chest. Pain threshold before we get some in-season changes. Doug, it's getting real bad. I am in the camp of not wanting to fire Steve Clifford because I just don't think it gets any better. I just want to hold on to him at the end of the season and then make the changes. But totally admit, when you even suffer 30-point blowouts in a half and you can't come back from it, suffer 30-point blowouts in games altogether, how much of more of this do we have in us and still keep Steve Clifford to the end of the season?
Well, I don't think that the same incentives exist with this franchise as like a Milwaukee Bucks, for example. So Milwaukee Bucks, they make a change midseason because it was obvious that Griffin had lost the locker room. They have playoff. They don't have playoff aspirations. They have NBA championship aspirations, and they have a fan base that is anxious right now, and they've tasted that glory, and they want to taste it again. And so the trigger that you pull is going to be a lot quicker in that situation, especially with a first-time head coach. So the incentives aren't exactly the same with the Hornets. I mean, if you're ownership, like, it's not as if firing Steve Clifford is going to all of a sudden, light the gates on fire in terms of folks coming back to attend the game. Is it going to inspire them to play better, to get more wins? Like, what are the incentives that you would be? Really, I think the only question you have to ask yourselves when you're going to make this decision is, do you feel like you can replace him with someone better in the offseason? Do you have some kind of vision of who that person would be and who you're going to go after? And then also, do you feel like he's lost the locker room? Because look, if that locker room is not responding to him anymore, and I would say at least the third quarter and parts of the fourth quarter of that Utah Jazz game, they did respond. They did say, all right, we're not going to completely roll over and die yet. But if your big stars, if Brandon Miller, if LaMelo Ball, if they go like this to Steve Clifford, then yeah, go ahead, because you do want to try to maintain some decent level of play for the remainder of the season to help some of the young players that you want to invest in, Nick Smith Jr., Brandon Miller, all of these guys. You want to see them develop, and the only way you develop is if you play well. And so if those are all the case, then yeah, go ahead, hit the ejector button. But otherwise, I just don't know what the incentives are to make a move.
Yeah, it would be to appease the fans. That's what it would be, because I understand it's going to get loud.
But for what? Like, again, they're not going to rush in and buy more tickets. It just doesn't make any sense. The fan base is only going to be the real fan base. I'm not talking about the folks on Twitter who, barely watch games and don't ever actually go to Spectrum Center, right? I'm not talking about those folks. I'm talking about like fans that would actually buy jerseys, go to the arena, pay for their Bally subscription or whatever. Those people, they're only going to be appeased by a winning product being on the floor. And now long term, that could mean that Steve Clifford's not a part of the organization. But just in the middle of the season right now, as long as those young guys are still responding, then I think, there's no point in doing it right now.
Yeah, and Jake Fisher, when we spoke to him last week, when he talked about Steve Clifford's future, he said that was a little more uncertain, which I was a little surprised by, and that the assumption was Mitch Kupchak was going to leave. I mean, I still think Steve Clifford is going to be gone by the end of the season. They're going to get a new head coach. But I do think this is what happens when you get beat by 30. It's the play-in James Borrego factor. If you get beat that badly, then anything is on the table. And so while I think most people that actually think about this thing from a logical standpoint, right, I think most people would come out and say, yeah, it's not going to get any better. Let's just ride it out, and then we'll make the coaching season in the off season. But there is something to be said for, okay, even if we don't think this is going to change, we can't sit by anymore and watch this team get destroyed by 30. If we think there is a shot that a new voice might bring some breath of fresh air, even if most likely that's not going to happen. But if we think there's a shot that might happen, then we got to do it, because we are an embarrassing product right now. I do wonder if there's anything like that might happen before we reach season's end. And this is where we are in Hornets territory. This is the kind of conversation that we're having, even if it's not on Steve Clifford. Like, maybe some of it is. Everybody shares responsibility. He might be gone because they just can't get right, even if it's because of injuries and because of the talent that they have or lack thereof.
What makes this difficult to evaluate, Walker, is that we're not dealing with a David Tepper. We're not dealing with a Matt Ishbia. We're not dealing with one person who owns the franchise who says, this is how I feel. I feel a sense of urgency. I want to bring a championship. I want to do it right now. There's not that kind of attitude that so far has been expressed. What I've heard from this group so far is slow and steady as she goes. We're going to take this season and evaluate and figure some things out. And, we've gotten a couple of sideline interviews, strangely, at like away games from the ownership, like in New York or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just haven't felt that kind of attitude. So when I look at this situation, if those owners, if Plotkin or Schnall had come out at some point and expressed some of that anxiety or even hinted at it, then I would come on here and say, yeah, 30-point loss, another 30. If he takes back-to-back defeats that are blowouts, his job could be on the line. But I just can't legitimately say that, because I just haven't felt that from this group.
Yeah, no, I don't think it happens either. And I will say, last thing, I think these guys are just they're sitting by now. I think they're very much in information, gathering information mode. And I know
the Hornets, I'm telling you, tops in the league at gathering more information about all kinds of subjects.
I know. I'm just telling you what it is. And then I think we'll start to see their fingerprints, what they're actually going to do on the basketball operations side once we get to the offseason. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. That's Doug Branson. Go check him out on everyhornetsboxscore.com. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. on Wes and Walker. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow to talk about the Knicks game.